Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Lady of Burlesque from 1943, and this continues my quest to review as much of William Wellman's filmography as I possibly can. Lady of Burlesque is starring probably William Wellman's favorite actress, other than his wife, I guess, Barbara Stanwyck, who hasn't been in a Wellman film in quite a while since the pre-Code era. This is about 10 years after that. This is very different from the pre-Code era, and you can see how different it is because this is definitely a post-Code era, because this is about a burlesque show and they can't really show all the bumping and grinding and all the salacious things, so they kind of have to put on skits and do nice musical numbers to kind of hide what's really going on in this film setting because of the code. And at this burlesque show and in this theater, there is a murder and a series of murders and the murder mystery, trying to figure out who is strangling these women and why they're doing it. Although that's not a great plot description, it's probably because I don't think this film is that concerned with its plot, which is an interesting idea from Wellman, because it almost feels like this film isn't as interested in the plot as it is setting up this burlesque theater and what's going on in that theater. It really is concerned with what's going on in the theater. And Wellman loves showing films about hard-working people. I mean, whether it's Other Men's Women or Heroes for Sale, he's always showing people when they're working, they're really dedicated to their job. It really represents something to them. It's a big, important part of their life. And Lady of Burlesque is no different. And I think, you know, like a film like Night Nurse, where they're still being sarcastic, they're still goofing off, they're still very human, but they have a lot of faith in their job. I think Lady of Burlesque is a lot like that in that respect, and that fascinates him more than a murder mystery. I wouldn't really think of Wellman as someone who's that interested in a murder mystery, and the way he directs it, it doesn't seem like he was at all. Now, this is based on a book called The G-String Murders by Gypsy Rose Lee, one of the most famous burlesque performers in history. Apparently, I'd never heard of her, but the movie Gypsy is based on her life, and she wrote this book, the book that this movie is based on. The interesting thing is a lot of people complained about the plot of that book, and I'm wondering if Wellman looked at the subject matter that he was making a movie of and went, well, I don't really want to make a movie like this, but I am interested in like what's going on with Barbara Stanwyck and this comedian, what's going on with the girls and their relationships, and what's going on backstage and their skits and the various performers and how they interact with each other. That seemed to be what this film is mainly about. And really, I find it interesting that a director would take a film, especially one based on a book, and kind of just not be that interested in it. You know, he's such a lean, economical filmmaker, it feels like he realized if he had done that approach, he'd be very bored, so he took a different approach. It's a little odder of an approach for him. I wouldn't say this is kind of a normal Wellman, because he's not as adherent to the plot. Sometimes he is, and he uses kind of normal Wellman tricks. While you're watching it, don't feel like that, but then in retrospect I realize are. He doesn't feel as alive as he did in his pre-Code films. It feels like in other films like A Star Is Born, Nothing Sacred or something, like he adapted and he found a way to get around it. But it's like Lady of Burlesque was like too much hiding, too much he had to withdraw from the audience, and even he couldn't get that to work. It's shot very differently. I mean, in like his old pre-Code stuff like Public Enemy, he's basically trying to use the camera and the camera's as much a performer as the actors, moving in and out and really using that camera, and with not much there. And now there's a scene where like everyone's running and there's a police raid, and you can see like these long hallways and this production value, and he has much more to do with the camera. It feels like he has a lot more money to work with at this point. It feels like Hollywood has kind of matured a lot more, and I don't think that means this story is better because of it. The production value, sure, is better than something like Night Nurse, but this isn't a better film than Night Nurse. He managed to find a working class film within this and kind of find his own kind of balance and, I guess, kind of a truth to the piece, because I don't think he could find much of a truth to the piece, because there's so much that kind of has to be insinuated that it kind of has a falsehood about it. Because of that, Wellman kind of tries to get around the fact that it's kind of a fake Hollywood movie, and that's really hurting it, and especially with the murder mystery. There's certain parts that just feel like straight out of a very lame 50s murder mystery TV show. Although there is like one, I think, very scary scene where Barbara Stanwyck's face to face with the murderer, then I thought that was actually fairly terrifying. But the murder mystery and I've read it through every review of it, and I definitely agree with it, just isn't really interesting at all. It's really boring. You kind of think it's interesting, and then you're like, oh, that's who it is. Okay, alright, I guess. Great being underwhelmed. If this film had been just kind of a film, kind of a loose, kind of foreign kind of film, just about what's going on behind the scenes at a burlesque show in this time period, I think it would be great. It feels like the murder mystery is almost shoehorned in. It's like Wellman got so away from the murder mystery, he almost makes the murder mystery feel like it shouldn't be there, and it makes it almost feel lamer because he has so much more love in his scenes where her and the comic are like flirting with one another, or the girls are talking in the dressing room, or a musical number, or anything like that. I feel like was a lot more inspired than anything that was going on during the murder mystery. If Wellman had gotten to do this film during the pre-code, it could have been rather good. Because of this post-code thing, I think this is the kind of film the production code really messed up. A lot of people say about the post-code era rather than the pre-code era is that they had to be a little more imaginative because they had to hide things and they had to, use their imagination, be more creative. To be honest, I don't feel like in a film like this might be an example of why after the production code came in, it was really awful, because films like this kind of just didn't really work. Now you could say, why did they do a subject matter like this when they know they really couldn't have done it in an appropriate way? That is a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I mean, it does seem a little stupid. Why didn't they do something that would have worked better in the production code? This certainly didn't, and it's certainly not a very great movie, but I think Barbara Stanwyck does her best with it, and I think Wellman tried to find his way out of it, even though ultimately he couldn't, but it feels like he definitely tried. Although ultimately failed with a movie that I'm not really that thrilled with and found kind of forgettable. So if you have seen Lady of Burlesque and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And the next film in my William Wellman series will be Roxy Hart with Ginger Rogers from 1942. And that'll be later actually this week. I'll have 2 this week. And I hope to see you then. And thanks for watching.